Hey Storystream fam. Welcome back. If you're here after part 1, thank you for riding this unraveling mystery with us. The theories, the support, the speculation, we see it all. Now in part 2, Dana's world is cracking open. The woman from the salon is back. The files are real. And the phrase Room 10 isn't just a warning anymore. It's a doorway into something much darker. If you're new, you're just in time. The whispers are turning into something louder. Hit that like, subscribe and notification bell, because what happens next changes everything. Whispers in Room 10. Part 2. Rooted in danger. The tunnel under Park and Elm used to be part of the old trolley line before the city filled in most of the routes. Now it was just another forgotten relic. Graffiti-covered concrete, rusted maintenance doors, and the smell of mildew thick enough to coat your tongue. I stood at the mouth of it, heart racing, sweat trickling down my back despite the cool night air. My burner phone buzzed once in my pocket. A final text. Come alone. Don't speak until I say. Wear gloves. I was already wearing a hoodie and jeans, my hair tied back, latex gloves in place. Paranoia had become habit now. I scanned the street behind me. Empty. No headlights. No watchers. No sign of Greg or the guy from the break room. I stepped into the darkness. Each footfall echoed, loud in the silence. Somewhere water dripped, rhythmic and slow. The beam of my flashlight cut through the murk, landing on a rusted sign. Maintenance, no entry. I kept going. 50 feet in, I heard movement. A shuffle. Then a shadow peeled away from the wall, and Beanie Girl stepped into the light. She looked rough. Dark circles under her eyes. A faded sweatshirt hung off her frame, and her hands were stuffed into the pockets like she was trying to hold herself together from the inside out. You came, she said. You're alive, I replied. She smirked, not with joy, more like exhaustion. Barely. We stood there, quiet, the tension buzzing like static between us. I saw the files, I told her. Greg, Room 10, the surveillance. I figured. If you hadn't, you'd be dead. She gestured down the tunnel, and we walked. The deeper we went, the more the air pressed in, like the tunnel wanted to swallow us whole. I need answers, I said. You'll get them, she said. But they won't help you sleep. We reached a door. Steel. Scratched. Locked with an old keypad. She typed in a code without hesitation. 7-0-4-3. The door clicked open. Inside was a narrow room lit by a single hanging bulb. A fold-out table. A crate used as a chair. A corkboard covered in clippings, maps, scribbled notes, and printed screenshots. This was her war room. Sit, she said, motioning to the crate. And listen. I did. She paced. They call it Project Sable, she began. Started in the early 2000s under a private contract between a biotech company and an unnamed federal agency. The goal was to study behavioral modification in high-risk populations. Mostly prisoners and unregistered immigrants. I swallowed. Modification. Drugs. Light exposure. Sensory deprivation. Sleep conditioning. Some of the subjects were in that room. Room 10. My skin prickled. Why Room 10? She looked at me. Because that's where the control group was kept. That's where they tested the extremes. I shook my head. But how did it end up in a beauty salon? She gave me a look. One part pity, one part awe. It didn't. You were just supposed to cut hair. But when someone's ready to defect, when someone needs to get something out safely, they can't go through usual channels. Too many eyes. Me, I said slowly. I was the blind drop. She nodded. You picked me at random? No. You came recommended. Clean record. No political affiliations. Quiet. I flinched at that. And expendable. No, she said firmly. Invisible. There's a difference. The system doesn't kill people who matter. It erases people no one notices missing. I thought of my small apartment. My routines. My predictable schedule. I had made myself vanish before anyone else could. Why now? I asked. Why blow this open? She hesitated. Because they started taking kids. That hit harder than I expected. She pulled a file from under the table and opened it. Inside were photos. Not just surveillance, but mugshots. School pictures. Children. Teenagers. One girl, maybe 14, looked eerily like Beanie Girl. My sister, she said. She was flagged for a special scholarship program. We thought it was a gift. 2 weeks later, she stopped calling. What happened? I tracked her. Found her name in one of the transport logs. She never made it to the school. She went to a compound in the woods just outside of Caldwell County. My breath hitched. Same place as the footage? Exactly. I leaned back, heart pounding. So what now? She fixed me with a steady gaze. Now we expose them. But we need to be careful. The files you gave Marcus? They're only part of it. The rest are still in the system. Which system? Their off-grid server farm. Underground. Codenamed The Well. Jesus, I whispered. She pulled out a flash drive. Sleek. New. This gets us access. I've been piecing together credentials for months. We'll need 2 entry points. Marcus can breach digitally. We do it physically. I stared at the drive like it might explode in my hand. I'm a hairstylist, I said weakly. I don't know how to take down a covert experiment. Maybe not, she said. But you listened when no one else did. That counts for more than you think. A sound echoed from the tunnel. Footsteps. Both of us froze. She moved faster than I could think, yanking the overhead bulb's chain, plunging us into darkness. Go, she whispered. Emergency exit. Left door. Don't look back. What about you? I'll buy time. Before I could argue, she shoved me. I ran. Back into the shadows, lungs screaming, knees weak. Behind me a sharp voice shouted, "She's here." Then, gunfire. I didn't stop. Not until I burst out of a drainage grate 2 blocks from the river and collapsed behind a dumpster, my hands trembling around the flash drive like it was a live wire. Beanie Girl might be dead. Or captured. Or worse. But I had the key now. And they still didn't know what I was about to do with it. The flash drive sat on the table like a loaded gun. Small. Innocuous. Lethal. I stared at it for a long time from across the room. I hadn't slept. My hoodie still smelled like mold from the tunnel. My hands had long since stopped shaking, but that didn't mean I wasn't scared. I was terrified. But more than that, I was angry. I'd seen what they did to Beanie Girl. Heard the gunshots. She might be gone. And if she wasn't, she was in hell because she tried to stop something no one else had the spine to touch. I wasn't a fighter. I wasn't a hacker. I wasn't a spy. But I had ears. And I had proof. And I had nowhere left to hide. I spent the day in a motel just off Highway 23. The kind of place with scratchy comforters, a broken soda machine, and no questions asked at check-in. The curtains stayed drawn. The lights stayed off. I powered up the burner laptop I kept for emergencies. A relic Marcus had insisted I keep when I helped him clean up his digital life after that gambling ring nearly swallowed him whole. Someday, he had said, you're gonna need an off-grid plan. Apparently, someday was now. The flash drive clicked in with a soft metallic snap. A single folder blinked into view. Access_sequence_final. I clicked it. Password required. I cursed under my breath. Then I remembered the code Beanie Girl typed into the maintenance door. 7043. I tried it. Access granted. The folder opened. Inside, dozens of PDFs. Video files. A single audio recording labeled red flag case under 3021 intercept P3. I didn't listen to it yet. I couldn't. I scrolled through the files, trying to make sense of the architecture. There were experiment logs dating back 15 years. Photos of subjects. Some blurred, some children. Internal emails between people labeled only by initials and case IDs. What chilled me most were the psychological reports. Some of the names listed matched those I'd seen in the backroom folder. Room 10 wasn't just an experiment. It was a proving ground. One of the reports read, Subject 3021 has reached full dissociative compliance. Memories of prior identity suppressed. Language patterns normalized. Reassignment to Group C approved. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just about mind control. They were erasing people. By nightfall, I'd picked apart half the folder and hadn't scratched the surface. But there was one name that kept repeating, buried like a watermark across logs, footnotes, and signature blocks. G. Templeton. Every log entry ended with it. Every approval. Every case closure. I opened the audio file last. My hands shook as I turned up the volume. A man's voice. Smooth. Cultured. Clinical. Subject displayed elevated aggression after 3rd week. We administered another dose of Theta X and increased visual loop exposure. Results promising. When asked her name, she responded with, Case 3021. No further resistance. Requesting authorization for off-site transport. Then a second voice. What about the witness? We'll deal with her. Click. The recording ended. I leaned back slowly, bile rising in my throat. That second voice. It sounded familiar. I couldn't place it exactly, but it had the same nasal quality, the same smug detachment. Could it be Greg? Or someone even closer? I called Marcus. He answered on the first ring. Where the hell have you been? I have it, I said. The rest of the files. Everything. Silence. You serious? I need you to go dark. Use one of your old VPNs. I'm going to send the package, piece by piece. You know they'll trace anything if it leaks too fast. I'm not leaking it. Pause. What do you mean? I'm going to a reporter. Marcus hissed through his teeth. Dana, that's... I don't care. I'm not running anymore. A beat. Then. Okay. But be smart. Whoever you talk to, make sure they're not owned. You think journalism's clean these days? Half of them are paid gatekeepers. I know someone, I said. I didn't, but I would. I had to. Because if I didn't make this real, they'd erase me like all the others. And worse, they'd keep going. At 2 a.m., I snuck out of the motel and made my way into the city, keeping off major roads, avoiding lights, tossing my burner every few blocks. I stopped at a 24-hour diner. Sat in the back booth. Ordered tea I didn't drink. Borrowed their public Wi-Fi and logged onto an encrypted message board Marcus had built years ago. A safe haven for whistleblowers and digital ghosts. I posted a message in one of the dead threads. Looking for a voice that still tells the truth. I have proof. Contact. Hairline fracture. Time is critical. Less than 10 minutes later, I got a ping. Private message. No profile. No history. If what you say is real, meet tomorrow. 5 p.m. East Side Library. 3rd floor study room. Bring it all. No name. Just a meeting. Just like Beanie Girl. I logged out, shut down the laptop, and left cash on the table. The next move would either get me killed, or make sure they never buried room 10 again. The East Side Library was a crumbling building with a clean coat of paint, lipstick on concrete. The city hadn't updated it in 20 years, but someone wanted it to look presentable on the outside. A symbol of quiet pride in a neighborhood everyone else forgot. I stood outside the main entrance at 4:55 p.m., pretending to scroll through my phone. My backpack, with a flash drive, burner laptop, and 2 sets of printed files, was strapped tight to my shoulders. If I was walking into a trap, at least I'd be walking in prepared. I stepped inside. The interior smelled like paper and bleach. A few kids huddled around a row of computers playing some kind of browser game, while an elderly librarian stamped return cards with the deliberation of a monk. I nodded politely and made my way to the back stairs. 3 flights. Each one creaked like it hadn't been oiled since the Cold War. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting someone to follow. No one did. The 3rd floor was nearly empty. Only 2 study rooms were occupied. Room 3B had its lights off. I checked my watch. 5 p.m. exactly. I knocked once. Nothing. I reached for the knob. It turned easily. Inside, a single lamp lit the room. A man sat at the far end of the table. Early 40s, mixed race, thick-rimmed glasses, and a blue pea coat that looked expensive but lived in. He didn't look like a journalist. He looked like someone trying not to look like anything. "You're late," he said. "I'm on time," I replied, closing the door behind me. He tapped a notepad. Punctuality is relative when you're already being watched. "Are we?" He gestured to a signal jammer on the table. "For the next 20 minutes, we're ghosts. Sit." I sat. The air in the room felt still, like we'd stepped out of time. I didn't trust him. Not yet. But something in his eyes, not kindness but certainty, made me stay. "You hairline fracture?" He smirked. "No. But I found your message." "Then who are you?" He paused. "I used to work at Draylen Technologies." I blinked. Draylen. That was the company name buried in the metadata of some of the PDF files. Beanie Girl had circled it on one of the printouts. A biotech firm that supposedly went bankrupt in 2008. "You're saying Draylen is still active?" I asked. "Oh, they don't exist anymore. But the people behind them do. They just changed the name. Reshuffled the board. Scrubbed their involvement." "Into what?" He slid over a manila envelope. Inside were business records. Shell corporations. LLCs filed in Nevada and the Caymans. One name repeated. Gideon Templeton. I stared. "That's the guy. He signed every report. Every approval." The man nodded. Templeton didn't just run the experiments. He built the theory. Behavioral regression. Cognitive overwrite. He called it adaptive de-identity protocol. The goal wasn't just to control people. It was to erase them, I said. "Exactly." I pulled out the flash drive. "Everything's here. Proof. Videos. Audio. Even subject logs." He reached out to take it, but I didn't let go. "First," I said, "I need to know if Beanie Girl's alive." He leaned back. "The woman you met in the tunnel?" I nodded. "Last I heard, she was in holding. They took her to Facility 3, just north of Coldwell. Not dead. But not safe either." I exhaled. Relief mixed with dread. Facility 3. That had come up in the audio file too, as a place people didn't return from. Why hasn't anyone exposed this already? I asked. If all this exists, why am I the first to do anything with it? He tapped the table. They don't just erase victims. They erase stories. A few years ago, a nurse in the Midwest tried to go public after she recognized a patient she knew had been missing for years, and completely brainwashed. She got doxxed, discredited, and committed for delusions. Their system doesn't rely on secrecy. It relies on disbelief. I frowned. So what now? He nodded to the flash drive. Now we publish. Not just anonymously but wide. I have channels. Independent outlets. Encrypted sources. You'll be protected, but once we do this, there's no going back. I hesitated. Will it even make a difference? If it gets loud enough, yes. And if it doesn't? He looked at me carefully. Then we disappear. Or worse, we become part of the experiment. I finally handed him the flash drive. He slid it into a secure case and placed it inside a false bottom briefcase. I'll contact you in 24 hours. Stay off networks. Use only trusted phones. As he stood to leave, he paused. One more thing, he said. What? Your name came up in a different file. Not subject logs. Not witness reports. Recruitment. I went cold. What? Back when you applied to your cosmetology school, Templeton's group had a stake in the financial aid fund. My throat dried. You're saying they were watching me back then? Not just watching. Grooming. They wanted someone like you. Someone with isolation, routine, low public exposure. You weren't just convenient. I was chosen. He nodded grimly. You were supposed to be inside room 10, Dana. The floor shifted under me. And yet, here you are. He gave me a sad half-smile and left without another word. I sat in the quiet for what felt like hours, the library lights flickering overhead. If they had chosen me once, they could choose me again. And this time, they knew I was awake. There's a certain silence that only exists in the middle of nowhere, the kind that makes your thoughts louder, more dangerous. That silence waited for me as I drove past the cracked, "Welcome to Baxter" sign and down the long winding road toward the house I swore I'd never return to. The place I grew up. The place I ran from. I hadn't spoken to my mother in 4 years, not since the night I left in the middle of a thunderstorm with a duffel bag and a pocket full of cash from a job at the gas station. We'd exchanged exactly 3 awkward holiday texts since then, all dry and all unanswered. Still, when I pulled into the gravel driveway, her porch light was on. Maybe she always left it on. Or maybe she somehow knew I was coming. I sat in the car for a full minute before I finally cut the engine. The door opened before I knocked. My mother looked like she had aged 10 years and hadn't slept in 10 days. Her graying hair was tied back, her eyes sharp but tired, and her arms were crossed like they always were, defensive even in silence. "Jesus, Dana," she muttered. "What the hell have you gotten yourself into?" So she did know. Or she'd seen enough on the news or social feeds to guess. I stepped inside without answering, the familiar scent of lemon cleaner and wood polish rushing up to meet me like a memory I didn't want. Nothing had changed. The same crooked lamp in the corner, the framed photo of my dad by the mantel, the squeaky floorboard by the kitchen I had always tried to avoid. She followed me in and shut the door. "I saw your name on some forum," she said. "And Marcus called. Said to expect you. Said to keep you off the grid." What the hell does that even mean? "It means I'm in trouble," I said, sitting on the worn couch, the cushions sagging the same way I remembered. She hovered near the window. "Big trouble. Big enough to make me come here." That seemed to sting. I didn't mean it to, but it hung in the air anyway. "I've got 2 rules if you're staying," she said finally. "No phones. And no lies." I nodded. Then she surprised me. "I've seen some of those reports." My heart skipped. "You have. They're buried deep, but they're out there. Stuff about black sites. Mind control. Lost identities." At first I thought it was some paranoid nonsense. Then I recognized a name. I sat up straighter. "Whose?" She walked over to a drawer and pulled out a faded yearbook. My high school yearbook. She opened it to the class photo page and tapped a face. A girl I hadn't thought about in years. Rachel Kennings. Quiet. Brilliant. Disappeared junior year. Rumors said she ran off to LA to become an actress, but no one ever saw her again. No goodbye. No explanation. Just vanished. She was part of it? I asked, stunned. "She disappeared without a trace," Mom said. "And a few months later, we got a visit." "What kind of visit?" 2 men in suits. Said they were looking into scholarship fraud. Asked questions about Rachel. "About you." Said something about a psychological research pilot. I didn't think much of it back then, but now. She shook her head, mouth tight. "You think they were recruiting even back then?" I think you were lucky. No, not lucky. Missed. They'd circled me before. Circled Rachel. Maybe the whole school. And the more I dug, the more I realized just how far their roots reached. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the back porch wrapped in an old quilt, listening to the wind move through the trees like voices whispering things I didn't want to hear. The laptop was off. The files hidden. And still I felt watched. By morning, Mom made coffee. Like nothing had changed. Like I was still 17 and angry and hiding bruises from a world that had never made space for me. But it had changed. Over eggs and toast, she looked up and said, "They'll come for you eventually, won't they?" I nodded. "And they'll come here?" "Maybe." She sighed. "Well then," she said, standing to get her keys. "We'd better not be here when they do." I blinked. "You want to run?" "I want to live. And I want you to live. That means we go somewhere quiet. Off map. You can finish whatever this is from there." I hadn't realized how much I'd needed her to say that. We packed light. Drove separately. Took back roads. Changed plates halfway through Arkansas. By dusk, we were holed up in a forgotten cabin that belonged to my uncle's second wife, a place no one would think to check. No internet. No neighbors. No noise but the wind and the creak of settling wood. And yet, even in that isolation, I knew we weren't alone in this. Somewhere out there, the story was spreading. And somewhere closer, someone was watching the wires. Waiting for me to make the next move. The first few days off the grid were almost peaceful. Unsettlingly so. No phones, no screens, no news. Just the hiss of the wind between pine needles and the occasional creak of the old wood frame of the cabin, like it was settling deeper into the dirt each night. My mother had taken up watch like we were living through a siege. She kept a hunting rifle on the windowsill and binoculars by the sink. It was oddly comforting, knowing she had slipped so easily into a kind of survivalist calm, like she'd been waiting her whole life for the world to fall apart in a way that finally made sense to her. Meanwhile, I tried to pick apart everything I'd learned. Gideon Templeton's name wasn't in the news. The documents I'd handed over in the library hadn't surfaced on any mainstream channels, which meant either my contact was compromised or holding out, or worse, the information had already been buried. Again. I tried to stay sharp. I read over the notes I'd copied, looking for names, places, patterns. The phrase, subject tier reclassification, kept jumping out at me from different files, but I still didn't understand what it meant. The documents were coded like someone expected them to be stolen and read. Or maybe that was just paranoia blooming in my head. On the third morning, I spotted a car. Not just any car. His car. Rusty blue Civic. Front bumper zip-tied together. I knew it like I knew my own reflection. Troy. My ex. The one I hadn't seen since the salon Christmas party 3 years ago, where he'd gotten too drunk and told the entire staff I was emotionally constipated with a savior complex. We hadn't spoken since. I stepped out onto the porch as he rolled up the drive. The dust cloud trailing his tires hung in the air like a bad omen. He got out slowly, holding his hands up. "Dana, before you scream or throw something, I can explain." I didn't scream, but I reached behind me to the screen door where my mother kept the rifle. He saw the movement and froze. Okay, that's fair. I get it. But listen. Please. I studied him, unshaven, wearing a battered hoodie, eyes ringed with fatigue and something else. Fear. "Explain," I said flatly. He stepped closer. "I saw your name. Not on the news, the deep stuff. The hidden message boards. And then, someone contacted me. Sent a file. Said if I cared about you, I needed to warn you. That they were coming." "They?" I asked. "The group. The people you pissed off. I don't know what you did, Dana, but it's big. And someone's watching everyone connected to you." That froze my breath in my chest. I glanced at the tree line. At the wide sky above. I had picked this place because it was invisible. And yet here he was. "I didn't tell anyone where I was," I said slowly. "I didn't follow you," he insisted. "They found me. I think they wanted me to find you." My mother stepped out with the rifle then. She didn't point it, just let it rest on her hip with a clear message. "One wrong word and you'll regret it." He nodded in her direction. Respectful. "Ma'am." She didn't respond. "You said they gave you a file?" I asked. He reached into his coat and handed over a small flash drive. No label. No return address. Just a drop in my mailbox with a note that said, "Give this to her in person." I was freaked out, Dana. But then I started reading what was on it. It's messed up." I snatched the drive and brought it inside. My mother followed me, rifle still in hand, muttering, "If he leads anyone here, we move tonight." I plugged the drive into my old, offline laptop. It was encrypted, but whoever had sent it left the password in the root directory. Rewind_protocol. The folder that opened was called Tier 0. Inside were names. Not victims. Not subjects. Recruiters. A list of people the organization had used to find test candidates. Salon owners. Coaches. Therapists. Foster parents. People in trusted positions. People who could spot vulnerability and hand it over without raising suspicion. One name leapt out at me. Margot Ellison. My old instructor from cosmetology school. She had always seemed so kind. Supportive. Said I had a sensitive eye for detail. She paid for my exam fee when I couldn't afford it. Encouraged me to move to Midtown. Even introduced me to the salon where I got hired. Had she been part of it the whole time? Had she delivered me? I sat back, heart pounding. They groomed you, Troy said quietly. Every step. There was more. Photos. Surveillance stills. One of them was of me at the library. Taken from across the street. Another from inside the tunnel. Blurred but unmistakably me. And then a final image that nearly made me vomit. It was my mother. Taken just days ago. Standing in the cabin kitchen. Pouring coffee. A timestamp in the corner. 5 hours 12 minutes and 2 seconds. This morning, I whispered. They were already here. I slammed the laptop shut and turned to my mother. We need to leave. Now. She didn't argue. She grabbed the bag she'd kept ready by the door and tossed me the keys to her truck. Troy followed, still pale. They're watching all of us. You understand? There's no hiding anymore. They're forcing you into the open. And that's when I realized it. This wasn't just surveillance. It was bait. They wanted me to run. They wanted to see where I'd go next, and who I'd take down with me. We didn't stop for hours. Troy drove like a fugitive. My mother sat rigid in the back seat, her eyes darting to every passing vehicle, every parked truck on the side of the road, like they could explode at any second. I stared out the window, clutching the flash drive in my hand like it might vanish if I loosened my grip. We didn't speak until we reached a run-down motel on the edge of a town so small it didn't even have a stoplight. The sign outside flickered. Vacancy. Behind it, the clerk barely looked up from his phone as we paid in cash and took the key to room 6. Once inside, I locked the door, jammed a chair under the knob, and pulled the curtains tight. Only then did I sit at the warped desk and plug the drive back into the laptop. The folder we'd opened earlier, Tier 0, wasn't the only one. There was a second file I hadn't seen before. It hadn't been visible in the root directory earlier. Its name was simple, almost innocuous. Play Me Dump E4. I hovered the cursor over it, hesitating. What is it? Troy asked behind me. I don't know, I said. Then don't, my mother warned. It could be malware. Or worse. But I was already double-clicking. The video opened with static. Then black. Then a sterile white room came into focus. A table. A chair. A person, seated, arms resting on the tabletop, wrists bound. At first the camera was too far to see clearly. But then it zoomed in. And I forgot how to breathe. It was me. Or at least, someone who looked exactly like me. Same sharp jawline. Same eyes. Same mole above the left eyebrow I've had since birth. But her hair was shorter, and she looked thinner, haunted. A man's voice, filtered and emotionless, spoke from off-screen. Subject 42A. Day 17. Reclassification pending. Proceed. The woman, the version of me, flinched. Her lips moved, but there was no audio from her. Her eyes darted wildly, terrified. The camera shifted again. This time it showed a screen, displaying her vitals. Heart rate. Elevated. Cortisol. Dangerously high. Brainwave data scrolled like stock tickers. My stomach turned. This wasn't just surveillance. It was experimentation. I paused the video and rewound it, searching for something I might have missed. Troy leaned over my shoulder. That's you, Dana. No, I said, my voice flat. It can't be. Look at her. Same face. Same features. She even twitches her thumb like you do when you're nervous. I didn't respond. I was staring at the timestamp. August 2019. The same month I'd blacked out for 3 days. Back then, I told myself it was just exhaustion. A mental breakdown. I'd been overworked, underpaid, and trying to hold together too many threads. I woke up in my apartment, dazed but safe. Or so I thought. I fast-forwarded through more of the video. They injected her. Me, with something. Her pupils dilated. Her hands twitched. She whispered something into the camera, again with no sound. Then, abruptly, the feed cut to black. Another file appeared on the screen. 42A. Exit interview. This one had audio. I hit play. Interviewer, tell us what you remember. Subject, I was in a salon, cutting hair. Someone came in. They said something I wasn't supposed to hear. Then pain. Bright light. And then I woke up. Interviewer, what do you think your role is now? Subject, to forget. To keep forgetting. I stopped the video. There was a long silence. My mother sat down on the edge of the bed, her face pale. Dana, she whispered, how much do you actually remember about that summer? I thought it was just a bad patch. Work burnout. I'd been having migraines. Then the blackout. I told you I was fine. But you weren't, she said. You came home for a day after that. Remember? And you were different. Cold. Detached. Then you vanished again. I stood up, pacing the tiny room. If that was me, then what am I now? Am I a copy? A replacement? Troy shook his head. That's not how this works. It's not clones or robots. It's conditioning. They break you, reshape you, and maybe they reset you when you get too close to the truth. I looked back at the screen. At her, the woman who looked like me but wasn't. Or was. And then another folder populated in real time. Final directive. No one had clicked anything. We all froze. It opened on its own. Inside, one document. A memo. Dated only 2 weeks ago. Stamped internal eyes only. Subject 42A has deviated from expected behavior protocols. Field Agent Dana Mitchell has displayed persistent recall and resistance to cognitive suppression techniques. Recommend reactivation protocol, termination or full rewrite. I didn't notice that I was shaking until Troy reached out and steadied my hand. Dana, they're saying you are the leak. I don't remember leaking anything. You might have done it before they wiped you. But why would I? And then the truth hit, harder than anything before. Because I already knew this story. Because somewhere deep inside the gaps in my memory was a version of me who had tried to expose them, and failed. And they didn't kill her. They just rewrote her. Me. The room spun. The lines between who I was and who I had been shattered like glass. My mother stood up, her voice low. We have to go, Dana. Right now. But before I could answer, the room phone rang. It was an old rotary model, cracked and dusty. None of us had given the motel our name. I walked toward it like I was being pulled by a string. It rang again. And again. Then silence. And a final mechanical click. A voice crackled through the receiver. Hello again, Dana. Welcome back to the beginning. Click. And that's the end. But Project Sable. Room 10. The well. Dana came looking for answers, but what she found could erase everything. And someone's already watching her every move. If you're hooked on the mystery, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss part 3. Because this story is about to hit a whole new level. Have a theory about Beanie Girl? About Dana's past? About who's really behind the curtain? Drop it in the comments. We're watching. And if you want bonus content in a shorter form like Reels, please give us a follow on Instagram at Storystream. Thanks for diving deeper with us. The whispers aren't fading. They're spreading.